Hey there! Today we are going to break down something that pretty much every single one of us has felt, but maybe don't fully get. We're talking about anxiety.
Plan for today. First, we're going to untangle the difference between normal anxiety and an anxiety disorder. Then, we'll dig into what causes it, look at the different ways it shows up, talk about diagnosis and treatment, and wrap up with some really practical stuff you can do for coping and self-care. It's going to be a clear path to understanding this whole thing. So let's get right into it with something that's absolutely crucial. Understanding the difference between just feeling anxious and actually having an anxiety disorder. Seriously, knowing where that line is can change everything.
So what is anxiety really? At its core, it's just a natural response to stress or fear. Think of it like your body's built-in alarm system. It's designed to go off when you're facing a challenge, to keep you sharp and focused. It's supposed to be there. And this is where we draw that line. A little bit of anxiety, that's actually helpful. It's what keeps you on your toes before a big speech. But an anxiety disorder? That's when the alarm system is kind of stuck in the on position. It's persistent, it feels overwhelming, and it starts getting in the way of your daily life, even when there's no real danger. The real difference is how much it impacts your ability to just live.
Okay, so where does all this come from? Let's go ahead and explore the roots of anxiety. And as you're about to see, it is almost never just one single thing.
Anxiety doesn't just pop up out of nowhere. It's usually this complex mix of three big areas: our biology, our psychology, and our environment. It's like a puzzle with pieces from each of these categories. So let's break them down. First up, let's talk biology. What's happening inside our bodies? Sometimes it's genetic. If anxiety runs in your family, you might just be a bit more prone to it. It can also be about your brain's chemistry, the natural chemicals that keep our moods in balance. And of course, big hormonal shifts can play a role too.
Next, there's our own unique psychological makeup. Our personality can be a big piece of the puzzle. Things like being a perfectionist or a tendency to overthink things can contribute. And our past experiences matter a lot, especially difficult things from childhood, or even just dealing with low self-esteem.
And finally, we have to look at the world around us, our environment. Big stressful events like losing a job or going through a breakup are obvious triggers. But so are long-term things, like dealing with a chronic illness. And hey, even our daily lifestyle choices, like how much caffeine or alcohol we consume, can really add to the pile.
Okay, so we've covered what anxiety is and where it might come from. Now let's get into what it actually looks and feels like, because it can show up in a lot of different ways.
See, anxiety isn't this one-size-fits-all thing. For example, there's generalized anxiety disorder, or GAD, which is that constant, excessive worry about, well, pretty much everything. Then you have panic disorder, which involves these sudden, intense waves of fear. And social anxiety, that's the intense fear of being judged or watched in social settings. They're all different.
But no matter the specific type, there are some really common threats. Let's start with what's happening inside your head. We're talking about that nonstop loop of worry, that habit of always jumping to the worst-case scenario. It can make it super hard to concentrate and just leave you feeling tense and restless all the time.
And then there's how anxiety shows up in your body. Remember that alarm system we talked about? Well, this is it going into overdrive. You might feel your heart racing, start sweating or trembling, get dizzy, or even feel short of breath. And yeah, stomach problems are a classic one. Your body is having a very real physical reaction to what your mind thinks is a threat.
Now, I know this can all sound pretty heavy, but here's where we turn a corner. We're going to pivot towards empowerment and solutions. So let's talk about the path to actually managing all this: diagnosis and treatment.
So how does a professional figure this out? Well, it's a really clear, straightforward process. It usually starts with a clinical interview, which is basically just a conversation about your symptoms and experiences. They might use a questionnaire, like something called the GAD-7, to help get a sense of severity. And sometimes they'll run a few medical tests just to make sure nothing else is causing the symptoms.
Once there's a diagnosis, treatment usually stands on these three solid pillars. And it's not always just one of them. In fact, a lot of the time, the best results come from a combination of talk therapy, maybe some medication, and really important lifestyle changes.
Let's look at therapy first. One of the most common and effective types is cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. The whole idea behind CBT is to help you learn how to spot, challenge, and then change the negative thought patterns that are fueling the anxiety. So instead of your brain saying, "I'm definitely going to mess this up," CBT helps you reframe it to, "I'm prepared and I'm going to do my best." It's about rewriting that internal script.
Medication can also be a really effective tool, especially for helping to rebalance your brain's chemistry. And this is super, super important. Medication must always be prescribed and managed by a qualified doctor. This is absolutely not something to try and figure out on your own.
All right, let's get to our final section, which is all about empowering you with things you can do every single day. We're talking about building your own personal toolkit for coping and self-care.
These are real, tangible things you can do to manage your symptoms day to day. Just figuring out what your triggers are is a huge first step. Practicing mindfulness can pull you out of that worry spiral and ground you in the present. And honestly, simple things like putting your phone down or just getting your thoughts out in a journal can make a world of difference.
And then we have the big picture stuff, the foundational habits that build up your resilience over time. Think of this as strengthening your core. Regular exercise is amazing for releasing those natural mood-boosting chemicals. A balanced diet, getting enough sleep, and connecting with people you care about, these are the absolute cornerstones of good mental health.
But you know what? Maybe the most important self-care strategy of all is knowing when it's time to ask for help. If anxiety is getting in the way of your job, your relationships, or just your happiness, reaching out to a professional is not a sign of weakness, it is a sign of incredible strength. I want to leave you with this one final thought, because it really reframes this whole topic. Anxiety is not a weakness, it's a signal from your body and mind asking for care and balance. It's your body's way of telling you that something needs attention. It's an invitation to listen to yourself. And with that, I'll just ask you, what's one small step you can take today to answer that signal?
Depression, it's a word we hear all the time, but what does it actually mean? Today, we're going to peel back the layers on this really complex condition that affects millions of people. Because understanding it, that's the very first step toward compassion, support, and most importantly, recovery. We all have bad days, right? We all feel sad or just down from time to time. So how do you know when it's just a passing feeling versus when it might be something more serious? That is such a crucial question, and it's exactly where we're going to start.
Because that's really the heart of it all. Clinical depression is so much more than just being sad. In this first part, we're going to break down exactly what makes it different.
So officially, depression or major depressive disorder is defined as a serious mental health condition. And notice the key words here. It affects how you feel, how you think, and how you act. This isn't just a mood, you see. It's a condition that can touch literally every single part of a person's life. This side-by-side comparison really makes it clear. Sadness is usually temporary, It's often tied to a specific reason, and you can still find moments of joy. But depression, that's a whole different story. We're talking about a long-term feeling of emptiness that can last for weeks or even months, and it just drains the interest out of everything, making it incredibly hard to just function. So, what causes this condition, and what does it actually look and feel like? Well, there's no single, easy answer. Depression is super complex, and it usually comes from a mix of different factors, which we're going to dive into right now. Let's start with the biology. This is so important to understand because it shows that depression has a real physical basis. It can be linked to your genes, meaning it might run in the family, or it can be about imbalances in brain chemicals like serotonin. Even things like hormonal shifts or dealing with a chronic illness can play a huge part. And then, of course, there are the psychological reasons. Our inner world, our thoughts and our past experiences, is incredibly powerful. Things like persistent low self-esteem, getting stuck in negative thought patterns, or having a history of trauma can all contribute to the risk of developing depression. And we can't forget about our surroundings. Things like social isolation, constant conflict in relationships, or just not having a solid support system, these can all play a major role. But here's the key. These causes don't just exist on their own. They usually weave together, creating this complex web where your biology, your personal history, and your current life situation are all interacting. So, just like the causes are varied, the symptoms are too. And they're not just in your head. They actually show up in 3 key ways: emotionally, cognitively, so in your thinking, and physically. Let's break those down a bit. Emotionally, it's that deep, persistent sadness or feeling of emptiness we've been talking about. It's also that total loss of interest in things you used to love. There's even a clinical name for it, anhedonia. But it can also look like feeling guilty, worthless, or even just being really irritable all the time. And this is where you can really see how it's a whole body illness. Cognitively, it might feel like brain fog, having trouble concentrating or just making a simple decision. And physically, we're talking about crushing fatigue, big changes in sleep patterns or appetite, and even unexplained aches and pains. It is just exhausting in every single sense of the word. Now, another really important thing to know is that depression isn't some one-size-fits-all diagnosis. It's actually an umbrella term for several different types of depressive disorders. This table gives you a good idea of the range. For instance, you have major depressive disorder, or MDD, which is what most people think of. But then there's also something called persistent depressive disorder, which is a milder but really long-term form. And then you have things like seasonal affective disorder, or SAD, which is directly linked to the seasons. This variety is exactly why getting a professional diagnosis is so critical, to figure out the specific type and find the treatment that's going to work best. Okay, so I know everything we've talked about so far might seem pretty heavy, but this next part, this is the most important part of our whole conversation. There is a clear path to recovery. Depression is absolutely a treatable condition. So let's talk about what that path looks like.
So the first step is always getting a proper diagnosis from a professional. This usually involves a really detailed conversation about what you've been experiencing, maybe a clinical questionnaire, and sometimes even medical tests, just to rule out other things. And the key thing for a diagnosis is that these symptoms have to have been going on for more than 2 weeks.
When it comes to treatment, the best results usually come from a combination of these 3 pillars: therapy, sometimes medication, and always lifestyle changes and self-help strategies. They all work together to support recovery.
So what does that actually look like? Well, therapy, like cognitive behavioral therapy or CBT, helps you learn to change those negative thought patterns. Medication like antidepressants can help rebalance brain chemistry, but it has to be managed by a doctor. And lifestyle changes, things like exercise, good sleep, and staying connected with people are incredibly powerful tools that anyone can use to support their mental health.
Recovery isn't just about what happens in a clinic or a therapy session. It's also about building those daily habits and support systems that help you manage things day in and day out. These tips right here are so practical and so powerful. Fighting that urge to isolate yourself is huge. Breaking down big, overwhelming tasks into tiny, manageable steps, that can make a world of difference. And maybe the most important one of all is practicing self-compassion, learning to treat yourself with the same kindness you'd give to a friend.
I just want to pause on this for a second, because if you take away only one thing today, please let it be this. Depression is a medical condition. Just like diabetes or asthma, it is not a character flaw. It is not a sign of weakness. It is an illness, and it can be treated.
All right, let's talk about something real. We're going to try and untangle 2 feelings that so many of us get mixed up: anxiety and depression. It's time to get some clarity on these super common and totally human emotions. Let's dive right in.
So does this hit home for you? You know that feeling, right? Like you're being stretched in 2 completely different directions. Your mind is just spinning, worrying about what's next, but at the same time, your heart feels so heavy thinking about the past. If that sounds familiar, I want you to know you are absolutely not alone. And figuring out what's what, that's the first real step to feeling more balanced.
Okay, so first things first. What even are anxiety and depression? Let's break it down, nice and simple.
So, anxiety. Think of it like your body's own personal alarm system. You know, that fight or flight thing? It's basically a shot of adrenaline that gets you all fired up for a challenge, which is great if you have a big presentation or something. But what happens when that alarm gets stuck in the on position? Well, that's when it becomes a problem, when it's constant and just totally overwhelming. Honestly, if you had to boil anxiety down to just one phrase, this is it. It's that question that just plays on a loop in your head, right? It's all about the future, and it just fuels all that worry and fear.
Okay, now let's switch gears to depression. And look, this is way more than just having a bad day. It's this deep, heavy feeling that just sticks around. It can mess with everything, your thoughts, your energy levels, and it can even steal the joy from things you used to absolutely love.
And this right here, this is the thought at the very heart of depression. It feels so final. Like the sadness isn't just happening now. It's gonna be like this forever. See how different that is from anxiety's what-if question? It's a huge contrast.
All right, now that we have the basic definitions down, let's put them right next to each other. This is where you'll really start to see the differences.
Okay,
Here's the absolute key takeaway. Anxiety is all about the future. It's looking ahead at what might go wrong. But depression, that's usually rooted in the past or what's happening right now. It's focused on what feels lost or just plain hopeless in the present moment.
This is a great breakdown. Look, with anxiety, the main emotion is fear, and it comes with this really high-tension, restless energy. Remember that adrenaline rush? That's it. Depression, on the other hand, the main feeling is sadness, and it brings this super low energy, this tiredness. It's really the difference between feeling totally revved up with worry versus feeling completely weighed down by sadness.
Okay, let's get even more real here. Do any of these sound like you? Constantly worrying, overthinking everything, feeling all tense and shaky, or your heart just racing for no reason? And oh my gosh, trying to sleep when your brain just won't shut up? Yep, these are classic signs of anxiety.
Now, for the other side of the coin, let's look at depression. See the pattern here? It's all about loss. Loss of interest in things you used to love, loss of energy, even a loss of meaning. It's that deep feeling of emptiness and a kind of exhaustion that sleep just doesn't seem to fix.
But, you know, it's really important to say this. These two things don't always stay in their own lanes. A lot of people actually deal with what's called anxious depression. It's like you get the restless worry from anxiety and the heavy sadness from depression all at once. If that's what you're feeling, I just want you to know it's completely valid and it's actually really common.
Okay, so we've spent some time defining the problem. Now let's pivot and talk about solutions. And we're going to start with a really cool tool for finding balance, and it's called the life wheel.
I love this visual because it explains the idea of balance so well. Just picture your life as this wheel. You've got these 5 key parts: your mind, emotions, relationships, body, and spirit. Each one is like a spoke holding the wheel together. Now, what happens if one of those spokes gets weak or breaks? The whole wheel gets wobbly, right? It makes it super hard to roll forward. So just take a second and look at this. Which part of your own wheel could use a little extra love right now?
So, the big question is, how do we keep this wheel of ours spinning smoothly? Well, let's get super practical. We're going to open up a toolkit of healthy habits you can literally start using today.
First up, let's talk about the mind part of the wheel. This is all about getting a handle on your thoughts. So, instead of letting your mind race, try grounding those thoughts by just writing them down. Instead of getting stuck scrolling through bad news, challenge your brain by learning something new. These seem like small things, but trust me, they make a huge difference.
All right, next, let's tackle the body and relationship spokes. And believe me, these two are totally connected. I mean, just a 20-minute walk can release those awesome happy hormones. Getting enough sleep can literally reset your entire mood for the next day. And spending time with people who actually lift you up, that is one of the best defenses against stress you can have.
Look, I get it. Trying to build huge new habits can feel like a lot. So let's start small. A simple morning routine, just like this one, can seriously change how your whole day goes. It's all about starting your day with a bit of intention, a moment of quiet, and that feeling of accomplishment you get from just planning out 3 simple, doable tasks.
Okay, all of these habits are amazing tools, but it's also so important to know when you need more support. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about your safety net and the signs that tell you it's time to use it.
I really need you to pay close attention here. If any of these things have been going on for more than 2 weeks, that is a major sign that it's time to get some professional help. Seriously, these are not things you should just try to push through by yourself.
So what do? Here are your first steps. Just talking to someone you trust can make a world of difference. And let me be really clear about this. Reaching out to a mental health professional is a sign of incredible strength. Taking these steps, this is how you begin to take your power back.
You know, this quote really says it all, doesn't it? It's not about making some huge, life-altering change overnight. It's about the small, kind things you do for yourself day in and day out. That's where the real, lasting peace comes from.
If you take away just one thing from all of this, let it be this. Please remember that no matter how dark or overwhelming things feel, both anxiety and depression are treatable, I promise. With the right help and support, things can get better. They really can. There is always hope.
So, I'm gonna leave you with a question. And I don't mean for tomorrow or for next week, I mean for right now, today. What's just one small, tiny thing you can do for yourself? Maybe it's putting on your shoes for a 10-minute walk. Maybe it's sending a quick text to a friend you trust. Or maybe it's just closing your eyes and taking 3 deep breaths.
Whatever it is, you have the power to do that one small thing right now.